right, good morning. Welcome again to the Victory Bible class on the very first Sunday of June. If you're a parent, it's the start of summer. If you're retired, I guess you're always on summer break, but good to see everybody. We'll give everybody a chance to get in here. It's being noisy out in the hallway. Always some. We could just turn around and stare at them until they get in here. All right, we do need one lady for nursery. If somebody would like to go over there. Mrs. Cheney, thank you. She put her hand up quick. I don't know if I should take offense to that. Any chance I can get out of here? But you do have to come back if they already have help. She's not listening to me now. If they don't need help, you have to come back. All right, let's make sure everybody's got what they need. If you need the packet of papers, the church bulletin, Sunday school lesson, or prayer list, raise your hand and we'll get that to you. If you need a prayer request slip. All right, looks like everybody has what they need, so I appreciate that. Take out your prayer request or prayer list, and I'm going to highlight a couple things that aren't on there, and then, of course, pray for the ones that are on there. Pray for Papa Fox. He had a stroke. He is in the hospital in ICU, so pray for him. It sounds like they got there in time to get all the blood thinners, and okay, so that's a good thing, but he's still in the hospital, so pray for him. I had a feeling yesterday he showed up to the activity for all of 5 minutes and went back home, so but pray for him. And Lord will take care of him as according to his will, but he does need your prayer. Pray for Brother Tim Owens. He's probably out doing security. Oh, he's right there. You're in there somewhere. On Friday, he's having surgery on his ankle. What do you know what time? 8:45. So 8:45. Before that, but especially at 8:45, pray for him having surgery on his ankle. I think I heard, Kara, you're going back to the doctor on this week, see whether you get out of the crutches or not. All right, so pray for Kara and trust that she'll be able to get out of those crutches, and the Lord will take care of her. The camp is coming up tomorrow, so pray for camp. Pray for the safety and all those things that go with that. Pray that the kids would make decisions. Every year kids make decisions, and just pray that they'll stick for that. So pray for camp. The tour group is out today. They're going to camp, and then after camp, they're gone the entire month of June. I think I heard Reed yesterday say that they're going to Toronto first, and then they're all across the country. So pray for the tour group. And then the Dominica trip is coming up in 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, 2 weeks after camp. And pray for that the Lord would use that. There's a group going down with Pastor and Brother Cheney. So pray for them, that the Lord will use them according to his will. So let's go to the Lord in prayer, and we'll continue on with what we have today. Heavenly Father, Lord, again, we thank you for another opportunity to be here, Lord. I pray that you'd meet with us today as you have before, and Lord, we need you again this morning. I pray that you'd be with us in your word. I pray that you'd be with us in the fellowship, in the singing, and everything that's said and done. Lord, I pray that you'd be with Brother Fox as had the stroke. I pray, Lord, that you'd heal his body. I thank you that they got to the hospital in time, and Lord, that all that needed to be done was done. But Lord, just continue to heal his body, be with him, strengthen him as he goes on throughout the day, and just get him out of the hospital just as quick as possible, Lord, and we'll thank you for it. Lord, be with all these other requests. I pray that you meet them according to your good will, and we'll thank you for all that you do, Lord, and we'll pray everything in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. Men, if you'll come and take up the offering, I'll go over the announcements while you do that. I want to thank the Zarns for opening up their house yesterday. They certainly didn't have to do that. Many of you have told me it was a good time. I had a good time, so I'm appreciative, if that's how you say it, to them for opening up their house. It seemed like it went well. I know some of you got your feelings hurt by a 9-year-old boy who caught a bigger fish than anybody else. And it was a good-sized fish, too. So I know some of you may have gotten your feelings hurt with that, but I think everybody had a good time. Lord provided very good weather, and I think everything went well. So we'll just plan on doing that every year. So we got one more activity to go, to have one every quarter. So we'll think of something for the hot summer months. Maybe we'll go out and just do something in a field somewhere where it's 95 degrees and 180% humidity, those types of things. I'm just kidding. We'll do something inside in the summer months, but it seems like everything's gone well. The biggest complaint I've heard with our activity so far is that it was freezing cold down in the tent for Christmas, and I do apologize for that. I will bring a heater next year to make sure, actually this year, to make sure everybody's nice and warm. All right. Again, teen camp is coming up tomorrow. If you're a part of that, you should know that by now, but pray for them as they go up junior and teen camp throughout the week. And I know there's many other churches coming in, so it'll be a good week. There's a ladies' game night June 13th at the school property, 6:30. So ladies, you'll want to mark that down. And then looks like there's also a men's softball and cookout day on Saturday, June 28th. So many of you want to be a part of that. I heard several complaints that, not complaints, but horseshoes, and you found some new muscle groups that you didn't know you had. So if you're in that category, you might not want to play softball, but come out for the fellowship and watch all the younger people play softball, and I'm sure it'll be a good time. The Dominica trip is coming up very, very quickly. All the things throughout the week. You can look in your bulletin, a lot of things coming up. Summertime, a lot of places get slow and not busy. Not around here. Things kind of pick up in the summertime because you don't have to run around chasing your kids and things like that. So a lot of things going on, a lot of activities, especially the beginning of the summer. So just a lot to pray for, a lot to keep in mind, and we'll just trust that. I don't know about you, maybe all out of this category, but I get excited about camp because I don't have to go. And all of my kids have to go. They don't have to go, but all of my kids get to go, and I don't have to go. They don't ask me to go, thankfully. So my wife and I get a whole house to ourselves for 5 days. I'm sure we'll be able to figure something out with all that. So anyway, let's do our birthdays and anniversaries, and we'll get into the Sunday school lesson. Birthday today through Saturday, and you want to recognize it, raise your hand. Brother Triplet. How many? No, just kidding. He doesn't know. Years? I didn't mean that. It says 61, so I couldn't do the math that quickly. I thought he was born in 64. Yeah, he was born in 61. He is 64. Any other birthdays? You probably want to raise your hand after that. I'll single you out. All right, let's give Brother Triplet a hand. And then I do not have any anniversaries, but if you have an anniversary today through Saturday, and you, again, want to admit it, I don't see any. All right, take out your Sunday school lesson. You can turn to the book of 2 Timothy. You can also find Ephesians 6 and Colossians 4 while you're at it. But 2 Timothy chapter number 4, we'll look at that again. We're looking at ministry companions. While you're finding your place there, I do want to say thank you to all of you who came out yesterday. I think we did have a good time. Again, it was beautiful weather. I'm thankful to the Zarns and opening up their house and renting the boats and all that went with that. And I think, kids running around, and it just seemed like a good time. So I appreciate that. All of you that brought food, all of you that lied to me and said the hamburger that I cooked was good too, I appreciate that. But we did have a good time, and we will have another activity in the next couple of months. So if you're not able to get to it, come to the next one, and we'll just, I did say many of you weren't there yet, but I did ask those that were there right before I prayed and we started eating the food. I want to have a name to our activities. So if you can think of a name. Now, Brother Strickland came up with a name. It didn't seem very agreeable to a lot of people. Something about Georgia Bulldogs. There was several boos I heard with that as well. But the reason for that is the church I grew up in, the Conqueror Sunday School class, which is one of the auditorium Sunday School classes, had every year they had a chuck wagon cookout. That's what they called it. And they've been doing it 30 years or so. And I just want to have that tradition, something to look forward to every year, even when we're off the scene. Those that come to the Victory Bible class after us, it'll be something to look forward to. So think of a name and something that has nothing to do with Georgia Bulldogs or Florida Gators or Florida State Seminoles, something to do with us that isn't necessarily unagreeable for everybody else. But if you can think of a name, and we'll do that, and just something that we can say, the Victory Bible class cookout is coming up, and people look forward to. It's not that important. It's just something that I want to do. So I'll take suggestions, because everything that I think of is dumb. But not as controversial, I should say, as the Georgia Bulldogs. I don't even know. What was the name? You don't remember. What was it? Georgia Bulldog Bash. For some reason, I don't think that's going to go over too well with all the Florida Gators fans. But anyway, and then we got some Michigan, some Ohio State, Florida State. Is Florida State even a football? I have a feeling this is going to delve into some place we don't want to go. He said we should call it the Bash the Georgia Bulldogs. All right, 2 Timothy chapter number 4. 2 Timothy chapter number 4. It's good to have fun in church. It's good to be around a bunch of people that I love. So I appreciate that, even if I don't agree with their choices. 2 Timothy chapter number 4, verse 12. The Bible says, "And Tychicus," I got to say that several times, so pray for me. "Tychicus have I sent to Ephesus." So today we're going to look at Tychicus, the faithful messenger. Tychicus, the faithful messenger. In the introduction here, it says, when considering the great characters of the Bible, Tychicus is not a name that stands out. As a matter of fact, how many of you, if I hadn't said that name now, would know the name Tychicus? You've probably read it, but it's one of those verses that you read and just sort of gloss over. It doesn't stand out. It's not Moses. It's not Abraham. It's not Paul. Most people have never heard of Tychicus other than scanning by his name when mentioned by the Apostle Paul. Now, we may not know him, but I promise you the Apostle Paul loved him, and it was a great companion of the Apostle Paul. And by the way, God knows him as well. All those names in Leviticus and Numbers that you read, and if you're like me, and maybe this is to my shame, I scan them because I don't even know how to pronounce half of them. But God knows every single person there. God knows not only the name, but the story behind that person. So we may gloss over it, but God doesn't. We find this relatively unknown man to be quite significant in the ministry of the Apostle Paul. Just because the Bible doesn't mention him very much doesn't mean he didn't have a significant role in the Apostle Paul's life and ministry. So we shouldn't gloss over him. Tychicus is first mentioned in Acts chapter 20, verse 4. Paul was about to sail to Syria on his third missionary journey. He was planning to deliver a gift to the poor saints in Jerusalem. You can find that in Romans 15. Paul had spoke of companions who had accompanied him. Tychicus was one of those companions. Tychicus was a faithful messenger for Paul. He accompanied Paul on several journeys as well as delivered messages for Paul on more than one occasion. On these mission trips, there were two duties Paul asked him to perform. So just a recap of this ministry companions. We've looked at Timothy so far. Timothy was that son in the faith to the Apostle Paul, that father-son relationship, and we looked at Demas. Of course, we know Demas forsook Paul. We've looked at Luke. I said that in my mind, my opinion, Luke was that one at the end of the night, that when everybody else had gone to bed, he had those conversations with the Apostle Paul. Apostle Paul would maybe sit there with Luke and say, what do you think about this? How did I handle this? I think Luke was that companion to the Apostle Paul. I think Tychicus, and again, this is just how my mind works, I think he's that one in that group where somebody's got to do it, and he's willing to do it. It's maybe not the most glamorous position. It's maybe not the position that anybody really wants to do, but somebody's got to do it. And Tychicus is the one singled out by the Apostle Paul that says, I can trust him to do it. I believe he can do it. I have confidence in him to do it. So I think he's that person in the ministry. I've said this, and I don't know that I need to keep saying it in this group, but I think with society today, everybody's looking how they can advance themselves. Tychicus wasn't that one. He wasn't offended that he didn't get the glory that the Apostle Paul got. He didn't get the attention that the Apostle Paul got. Tychicus wasn't about himself. He was about the ministry, he was about Paul, and he was about advancing the cause of Christ. So I think Tychicus, and by the way, there's way more Tychicuses in the world than there are the Apostle Pauls. If you think about that, and I think of sports all the time, I like sports. I was thinking about this the other day as I was studying for this, and I'm not a Tom Brady fan, but how many Tom Bradys are there out there? There's 29 or 30 football teams, professional football teams. Each of them has a quarterback, a starting quarterback. But how many of those starting quarterbacks are the level of Tom Brady? But you go that even further, how many college football teams are there that have starting quarterbacks? How many of those get selected in the draft and ever make it on a roster of a professional football team? And if you put that in the realm of church, there's one pastor. He has the position of pastor. He has a staff that support him, and then the church. There's way more Tychicuses out there than there are the Apostle Paul, if that makes any sense. So let's look at these points that we have here, and we can learn something. It's amazing to me. Brother Chitty mentioned it, and you've heard it before, but the Bible is a living book. There's an obscure character that was important probably only to the Apostle Paul that he writes about that we can learn something about. Not much is mentioned about him, but there's a whole wealth of information that you and I can learn because God saw fit to make mention of him in the Bible. So let's look at these. Number one, Tychicus. I'm just going to start calling him Ty because that's easier to say. Tychicus was to report on Paul's condition. Turn to Ephesians chapter number 6. Let's look at this. Ephesians chapter number 6. Look at verse 21. Ephesians chapter 6, verse 21. The Bible says, "But that ye also may know my affairs, and how I do, Tychicus, a beloved brother and faithful minister in the Lord, shall make known to you all things, whom I have sent unto you for the same purpose, that ye might know our affairs, and that he might comfort your hearts." Paul is not in Ephesus. But the church at Ephesus needs the Apostle Paul. Paul can't be everywhere at once, so he chooses Tychicus to go report on his condition and to be a comforter to the church at Ephesus. Our lesson here says, no doubt, the church at Ephesus was concerned about Paul. There were no telegraphs, no telephones, no email, no Facebook. You couldn't get on a plane, you couldn't get in a car. Someone needed to give a firsthand account of how their beloved Apostle Paul was faring. Paul trusted Tychicus enough, and this is important. There was a message that needed to be delivered. Paul loved the church at Ephesus. So who am I going to send? I can't just send anybody. I got to send somebody that's going to go in my stead, check on their welfare, and give them comfort. So he sends Tychicus. He trusted him enough to know that he would provide an honest assessment of Paul's welfare. He would neither gloss over it nor over-dramatize it. That's not saying the others in the group would have done that, but he could trust Tychicus to give a real, honest assessment of how Paul was doing. It wasn't, Paul's, he's right on the verge of death, things are just going so horrible. That wasn't Tychicus. This is how Paul is doing. It wasn't just, hey, how is Paul doing? Okay. That wasn't Tychicus. It was an honest assessment. Today, missionaries send letters to inform their supporting churches of the work and their condition, or their return from the field to visit their supporting churches and share the news of their work. They didn't have that opportunity back then. I would imagine if you wrote a letter, it would take a long time to get there, just like if you send it through the post office today. Just kidding, except I'm not. Tychicus was the messenger who delivered such a report for the Apostle Paul. Being a messenger may seem like a menial task, but it was not a menial task to Tychicus. Tychicus, Paul got a letter from Ephesus. Somehow he found out how the church at Ephesus was doing, so he wrote a letter back. Somehow that letter's got to get there. Who's going to tell them how Paul is doing? Who's going to tell them the things that God wants them to know? Somebody's got to get it there. You can't put a stamp on it and mail it through the Roman postal service. Somebody's got to get it there. Who's going to take it? There's many people in the world today who think, well, that's beneath me. Why would you, Paul, why would you choose me to do that? You just want me to walk over to Ephesus and drop off a letter for you? That's not how Tychicus looked at it. The Apostle Paul asked me to do something. It's on the same level as if I was preaching alongside of him, or anything that you can think of that had more glory to it. It wasn't a menial task. It was a task that had to be done. There's still those tasks today, by the way. Pastor can't be everywhere all at the same time. He can only be one place at one time. I don't know if you've ever tried to have two thoughts at the same time, but it's impossible for humans to have two thoughts at the same time. He can only think about one thing at a time. So he's got people that should be willing and are willing. We got a good group of people in church that should be willing to do the things that pastor wants to do but can't do. I would imagine if Paul could, he would want to go to Ephesus, but he couldn't. It wasn't in him to be able to do that at the time, so he sends Tychicus. He was willing to be the person who reported to the Christians at Ephesus. Sometimes the task that seems to be the most insignificant are the most vital. I think of Tychicus in this case as even-headed, level-headed. He wasn't going to tell too much. He wasn't going to tell too little. And he wasn't going to say this task is below me. He wasn't going to say this is the most important task in the world. This is just something the Apostle Paul has me to do. I'm going to do it. If he's asked me to do it, I'm going to do it. He was willing to report on Paul's condition. Number 2, Ty was to comfort the Christians in Colossae. Turn to Colossians chapter number 4. Let's look at this. I promise you, if you've read the Bible through, you've at least glossed over this about Tychicus, but it's in there. Colossians chapter number 4. Notice there's a lot of the same things that we saw in Ephesus. Colossians chapter number 4, verse 7. All my state shall Tychicus declare unto you. That's what he did in Ephesus. Who is a beloved brother and a faithful minister and fellow servant in the Lord, whom I have sent unto you for the same purpose, that he might know your estate, and notice this, comfort your hearts. Doesn't it sound familiar? That's what Tychicus was to do in Ephesus. He was supposed to take the letter that Paul had wrote to the Ephesian church and deliver it and tell them about Paul, find out how they were doing, and provide comfort. And then the need arose for the church at Colossae, the same thing. So Paul writes a letter, and he gives it to Tychicus, and he says, you got to go to Colossae now, and I want you to tell them how I'm doing, find out how they're doing, and provide them comfort. Tychicus was to comfort the Christians in Colossae. He was to be not only a messenger, but also a comforter. If you think about it, that menial task becomes more important. Tychicus, you got to go to Ephesus and you got to tell them how I'm doing, but I need you to comfort them. You know what that says to me about the Apostle Paul is that he trusted Tychicus. He could trust him to provide the comfort that these churches needed. You couldn't just send anybody to do that. Some people don't care about other people. But Tychicus did. Why did these Christians need comfort? Paul was very significant to them. He had spent 3 years with them. He was their spiritual guide and leader, and now their leader was in prison, so he obviously could not make this report himself. When a messenger arrived in Paul's stead, he would need to be one who could offer comfort as well as information. This is more than a messenger. Hey, Paul's in prison. Here's a letter. See ya. That's not what they needed. Paul's in prison. Here's the letter. Let's sit down and talk about it. Let's sit down and if y'all need to have a good cry, let's have a good cry. You know, if you need a shoulder to cry on, I'll be the shoulder to cry. And whatever it needed to be, Tychicus was the one that could do that. He provided comfort for the Apostle Paul. And by the way, I believe he got that from spending so much time with the Apostle Paul. It wasn't just a messenger service that he was calling up here. This was a friend. This was a companion. This was a fellow servant. So they would need comfort. He was their spiritual guide and leader, and now their leader was in prison. Well, when a messenger arrived in Paul's stead, he would need to be one who could offer comfort as well as information. Paul trusted Tychicus to do what he could not. Again, this is more than just sending information. Tychicus, I need you to send this letter. But when you get there, they're going to need you. They're going to need some comfort. They're going to need some strength. They're going to need some prayer. They're going to need some guidance. I'm choosing you. That menial task is becoming a little more heavy. Often people struggle when their leader is in crisis. Seemingly, Paul understood that and wanted the Christians at Colossae comforted so that they could continue to do the work of God in his absence. He did not use Paul's condition to further himself or his ministry. He did what Paul asked him to do. Paul trusted him to carry out the task assigned to him. You know what a messenger is supposed to do? To deliver the message that the one that gave you the message wants. Not your own message, not your own interpretation. I don't know if you ever did this when you were a kid, but I remember doing this in school when the little telephone game or whatever they called it, but they give a story and they'd whisper it in somebody's ear and pass it around the room, and by the time it got back to the person, it was a completely different story. Why is that? Because somebody puts their own interpretation, their own spin on the story, and by the time you get back, Bobby ate a candy bar. By the time it gets back is, Jenny was out in the field shucking corn. Like, where did we get here? But somewhere along the line, the messenger failed to deliver the message. That wasn't Tychicus. It was Paul's message, and he was going to deliver it in Paul's way, and Paul trusted him to do that. But then when he got there with the message, Paul could trust Tychicus to provide comfort. Hey, guys, read this letter. Here now, let's sit down, and we'll discuss it. You're going to need some help. You're going to need some guidance. So he was that one that Paul could trust to comfort the church at Colossae and also Ephesus. Number 3, he was a dear brother. Paul had many associates in the ministry. I can just imagine the Apostle Paul, everywhere he went, had some followers, but not all of them were brothers. Not all of them were those faithful companions. Some of them were just there because it was the great Apostle Paul. It's like the circus coming into town. and you just got to see what it's all about. But that wasn't Tychicus. That wasn't Luke. That wasn't Timothy when Timothy was traveling along with him. That wasn't Demas for a while. Paul had many associates, but in fact, he often spoke of them as brethren. It could be assumed that Tychicus was a man who had a good spirit and encouraged the heart of Paul. There were certain men whom a pastor wants in his presence in the darkest hours because they encourage their heart to the man of God. Tychicus was this type of man. Tychicus was the type of man Paul wanted around. Paul's ministry, if you haven't figured out by now, was a hard ministry. There wasn't anything about Paul's ministry that was easy. Not a single part. I can imagine every day of Paul's life, he was in the ministry, he was walking, he was laboring, he was imprisoned, he was starving. There wasn't a day that went by, in my opinion, in the Apostle Paul's ministry that was easy. Tychicus was a part of that, by the way. Why would Paul have that type of man around? Well, there was something there about Tychicus that encouraged Paul. Tychicus was more than Paul's dear Christian brother. He was more than an average ministry companion. He was an intimate friend. He was somebody, again, at the end of the day, I think Luke was that one that was up later than anybody else, but at the end of the day, when the crowds have gone out and it's just the group that you came with is sitting there, there's got to be some comfort there. There's got to be some intimacy there about these friends that you're going to want to say, I'm going to go out the next day and do this all over again. So he was a dear brother. Number 4, he was a faithful servant. Paul spoke well of Tychicus. He described him as a faithful servant. And again, faithfulness in today's society, that it's an odd thing. Loyalty and faithfulness. People are quick to drop you when at the first sign of trouble, but that's not Tychicus. Somewhere along the line, Paul had to go to prison the first time. And I don't know if Tychicus was there, but the first time Paul went to prison and Tychicus was there, he had to make a decision in his mind. Is this what I want to do? Is this how I want to live my life? And he said yes. Because Paul got out of prison, they went to the next town, and they did it all over again. So he was faithful, a faithful servant. It's one of those kind of servants that no matter the cost, I'm going to be there. No matter the road ahead, I'm going to be there. Tychicus made that his mind up about that somewhere along the line. There's nothing new under the sun. You know, Daniel had the purpose in his heart, and you read the rest of Daniel, he stuck to that purposing. Well, somewhere along the line, Tychicus had to say, I'm going to do this. Whether I danger my life, whether I go in prison myself, whether my life is taken, he was a faithful servant, the Apostle Paul. To call him faithful, a faithful servant, is a high praise. One day, when we are in the presence of the Lord, the quality that he will praise the most is faithfulness. By the way, again, the Bible says the only way to make God happy is through faithfulness. Without faith, it is impossible to please him. Many begin serving faithfully, but there are few who remain faithful in serving. Some serve for a season. A faithful servant continues serving without interruption or distraction. I know we're talking about Paul, and I know I've said it over and over again, but it can't be understated. Serving with the Apostle Paul was a hard thing to do. So the men that stayed with it deserve our praise. When things get going, when tough things come, people tend to start walking away. Well, it's not what I signed up for. Well, it's not what I signed up for either, but if that's what the Lord has, then that's what the Lord has. That's a faithful servant. So he was a faithful servant. Number 5, he was a faithful, notice these words, faithful minister. Being a faithful servant and a faithful minister may seem the same, but they are not. To serve is to fulfill a duty. To minister is to focus on meeting a need. In other words, Tychicus had to be selfless. It's not about me. It's not about my desires. If and I don't know that happened back in Roman times, but if as a young boy somebody said, "How do you see yourself in 30 years?" I don't think it would have been walking alongside a preacher who's always going to prison. It's the big house and the nice car and those type of things. That's how you see yourself. When you're a kid in school and they have career day and those type of things, nobody chooses, I'm going to be the missionary that goes to prison all the time. But somewhere along the line, Tychicus had to put down himself, his needs, his wants, his desires, and say the Apostle Paul is the one that God has chosen, and I'm going to serve alongside him, so it's not me, it's about the Apostle Paul. And by the way, being about the Apostle Paul was being about the Lord, because that was the Lord's minister to the Gentiles. It is possible to fulfill our responsibilities. Notice this. It is possible to fulfill our responsibilities without ever giving thought to the needs of others. Isn't it about others? We have others ministries. In those others ministries, sometimes you got to give up something of yourself, time, effort, dreams, because somebody else has a need. The people that go through life only thinking about themselves, I feel sorry for them. If you go through life with blinders on and never look at the needs of others, I feel sorry for you. There's a whole world out there. You say, well, what about my needs? Isn't God enough to take care of your needs? People have said this to me throughout the years, and I disagree with it because the Bible disagrees with it. It is not my responsibility to take care of my family, to provide the needs of my family. Let me say it that way. The Bible just says if you don't work, you don't eat. So as long as I work, God will take care of the needs of my family. I don't have to go out there and make $1 million to take care of the needs of my family. I just have to do what I'm supposed to do and trust that God will take care of it. So if God's taking care of me, can't I take the focus off of me and put the focus on somebody else? It's a trust thing. Tychicus had that ability. Did he have needs? Sure. Did he have wants? Sure. But somewhere along the line, he said, it's not about me, it's about the Lord. And if it's about the Lord, then it's about the Apostle Paul, because the Apostle Paul is the one that God has chosen, and I get to serve alongside of him. Tychicus wasn't one of these people that said, well, I have to serve alongside of him. No, Tychicus said, I get to serve alongside the Apostle Paul. There are Christians who are great servants, but they do not personally minister to others. I don't know if you have ever seen this. I've had the opportunity to travel a lot. There are pastors out there who are focused on their ministry to the detriment of others. There's not enough time to focus on others because I have to do this. There's not enough time. I've been with them. I've seen them. You say there's nobody out there like that. There are. So set in my ways. So, this is the time that I have to prepare for tomorrow. Tomorrow's Sunday. It's the big day. I got to prepare for tomorrow. But if the phone call comes in and somebody else needs you, what's your responsibility? By the way, our pastor's not like that. Our pastor is always about others, a lot of times to the detriment of himself. He was a faithful minister. Tychicus did both. He served, and he provided the needs of others. We need faithful servants, but we also need faithful ministers. What does the Bible call it? Paul said, God put me in the minister. It's about others. The ministry is not about me. By the way, there are pastors out there, too, who won't take a church unless there's a certain salary. I don't understand that. Shouldn't even ask about the salary. Isn't God going to take care of you anyway? I met a pastor years ago. We were on deputation. We were at a church, and there was a pastor that was telling me about his golf package that came along with his salary. If the church can do that, great, but I think there's probably missionaries that could get on the mission field without a pastor having a golf package. My opinion. Number 6. He was a fellow servant. Tychicus worked well with others. He did not need the spotlight shining on him. Pastor made the statement, it's been a while ago, I don't know, a year or two ago, but he made the statement in passing, and I remember it, but he said, nobody likes to serve in the shadows anymore. Everybody wants the limelight. That's the society we live in. That wasn't Tychicus. Tychicus didn't care about the limelight. When he went to town with the Apostle Paul, who got the focus? It was Paul, not Tychicus. When we first had Evangeline, and I noticed it right away. Very quickly, it wasn't David and Jen anymore. It was, where's the grandkids? So good to see the grandkids. Nobody said it was good to see you anymore. Or if they did, it was after all the grandkids had got the hugs, and I haven't seen you in a while, I haven't seen the grandkids, and then you're sitting there afterwards, and you're sitting on the couch, and then your people look over, and they say, oh, hey, thanks for coming as well, you know. And I say that jokingly, but that's, you know, Tychicus, it was the Apostle Paul. And then maybe later on, somebody noticed Tychicus. He wasn't concerned about the limelight. There are people who love to serve but not work well with others. They need to be in control or have the spotlight on them. Tychicus was not that kind of man. He did not need to be the quarterback to contribute to the team. By the way, the quarterback, any professional quarterback, they always take very good care of their linemen. Very good care of their linemen. They don't get the attention that the quarterback gets, but they get it from the quarterback. Again, I'm not a Tom Brady fan. I am fascinated that he's the same age as I was, and he was still playing professional football. But you read about Tom Brady. Tom Brady took very good care of his linemen. Very good care of his linemen. It wasn't about them. It was about the team. He enjoyed serving with Paul and undoubtedly understood his role and relationship in the ministry. Paul had written a letter to Philemon. The purpose of the letter was to ask that a former slave by the name of Onesimus be received. Paul showed his care for his new convert by sending a letter petitioning for forgiveness and restoration by Philemon. Notice this. Paul trusted Tychicus to accompany Onesimus to Philemon. Paul had good reason for trusting Tychicus with such a task. Rather than being about Tychicus, it was about Paul. Tychicus was willing to sacrifice. That's not saying Paul didn't sacrifice. Paul sacrificed a lot. But Tychicus was willing to sacrifice, again, his dreams, his wants, his desires, everything that he had for the service of Apostle Paul for the cause of Christ. So Paul trusted him to go alongside to accompany Onesimus to Philemon. Tychicus was a man of grace who could help encourage the Christians in the church at Colossae to accept Onesimus. Paul trusted him as his new convert. We need more in the ministry like Tychicus, who can be trusted with the watchful care of a new convert. Paul passed responsibility of this new Christian to Tychicus. We need some in our churches to whom the pastor can pass responsibility for the nurture of new converts. As we grow, it's a big enough church anyway, but as we grow, there's more responsibilities. Pastor can't do it all. So he's got to pass that responsibility. What was it? We moved over here in 2019, and 2019 until November of last year, Pastor was the pastor, the Sunday school teacher, all those things, and he gave up and I know he likes to be up here because that's what God called him to do, but he gave up the role of Sunday school teacher to many others, and many more too as we grow, by the way. I'm not here in my stead, I'm here in pastor's stead. That's somebody like Tychicus. I can't do it. Paul says, I can't do it. I've written this letter. It's my letter. I can't do it. Somebody else has got to go, so he chooses Tychicus, somebody he could trust. This would include befriending them as well as abiding them in their spiritual growth, encouraging their church attendance while involving them in the church, and introducing them to fellow believers. All of this helps to ground a new convert. The world is again, self-centered, focused on themselves, but Again, years ago, there was a man that came to the church in Maryland, and I think either I went to visit him or my wife and I went to visit him afterwards, and I hadn't seen him in a little bit, and I was talking to him, and he said, "Oh, I'll never come back to your church." And he said, I'm sorry to hear that. Is there anything I can help you with? He said, "Well, your pastor didn't shake my hand." Now, I grew up in a church that on Sunday morning there was 1,500 people. Pastor didn't shake everybody's hand because he couldn't. But that's where Tychicus comes into play. Now, the pastor wants to shake everybody's hand, but can he? Realistically, no. As the church grows, so it's somebody like Tychicus that can help ground a new convert. The modern-day Tychicus understands that there is no greater work than helping a new Christian grow in the Lord. Twice Tychicus was sent to locations so that someone could visit Paul. In Titus chapter 3, verse 12, Paul sent him to Crete so that Titus could visit Paul. In 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 12, Paul sent him to Ephesus so that Timothy could visit Paul. What an amazing man Tychicus must have been. He was willing to travel and take on the responsibility of others so that both they and Paul could be blessed. You know what this says to me about Tychicus? He was versatile. It wasn't just one thing that he knew how to do. Hey, I need you to go to Crete so Titus can come. What I need you to do is fill in for Titus while he's gone, so you got a lot of responsibility. He trusted Tychicus to do that. He got back and he said, "Well, now I need you to go. I need to see Timothy, so you go fill in for Timothy in Ephesus so Timothy can come." And again, they didn't get on a plane, so that was a long time going, staying while Timothy was walking back, the time he spent with Paul, and then Timothy had to get back to Ephesus. So he was there for a while, but Paul trusted Tychicus. He was a versatile Swiss Army knife, if you will, in the workings of the Apostle Paul. Who am I going to send? I need to see Titus. Who am I going to send? Well, Tychicus can do it. It seems like Tychicus can do everything except pronounce his name. What an amazing man he must have been. It's important to note that Tychicus put the ministry above himself. Let me say that again. It is important to note that Tychicus put the ministry above himself. You say, well, when did Tychicus get recognition? Well, the day that he took his last breath, he opened his eyes, and the Lord Jesus Christ said, "Well done, that good and faithful servant." So I think he got the recognition that he deserved. No doubt he enjoyed Paul's company and felt a special call to serve with him. Yet Tychicus went to Crete to take on the burden of the work so that Titus could go to Paul. Churches should be full of such unselfish ministry companions. Christians should be willing to make sacrifices and take on responsibilities for the sake of the ministry, just as Tychicus did. I liken this, everybody wants to be in the service. Somebody's got to be in the nursery. That's a sacrifice. Everybody wants to be here, but somebody's got to be over there. On Christmas Day, when we're all sitting around the Christmas tree and opening presents and enjoying time with family, there's police officers that gave up their day. That's a Tychicus. I think of the Hensons, the Amanda Ranch, which it's an important ministry to our church, but it's also an important ministry personally to our pastor, but it's in New Mexico. So who's going to take care of that? Well, the Hensons are a bunch of Tychicuses who said, you know what, I want to be here around my church family, but there's a need out there almost 3,000 miles away, and I'm going to take care of it. It's sacrificial. That's a Tychicus. There are those who are going to camp next week. I'm willing to be a Tychicus and have a house all to myself with my wife for the sake of the ministry. But it's a Tychicus. It's not about me. It's about the ministry. And if my ministry is Pastor Greg Neal, then that's what my ministry is. Tychicus just decided one day, if my ministry is the Apostle Paul, then Apostle Paul is my ministry. And I'm going to do everything I can for the ministry. In conclusion here, because I'm out of time, Paul has come to the end of his life in ministry. At that point, he sent Tychicus to Ephesus so that Timothy could bring the cloak and parchment to his mentor, the Apostle Paul. Rather than being by Paul's side during those last hours, Tychicus was willing to leave to do what was more needful. I'm sure he wanted to be there because he knew time was short with Paul. But it was more needful for Paul that Timothy be there. Paul needed Timothy, therefore Tychicus had to go. His faithfulness to Paul took him away from Paul when he probably wanted to be with him most. Paul did not take his ministry companion for granted. He spoke glowingly of him. The greatest tribute to Tychicus, though, was not what Paul said about him, but how Paul trusted him. We must not strive to be the one applauded, but instead the one depended on to get the job done. Paul trusted Tychicus enough to allow him to be his faithful messenger. It says here, and I would second this, we need more men like Tychicus. Ministries cannot prosper without them. What a great, great testimony about a man that nobody's ever really heard of. Tychicus, a faithful servant to the Apostle Paul. Pass in your prayer request slips to the aisle, gentlemen, if you will collect them. And everybody's staring in the back door. We'll come in here in a minute. Do pray this week. Pray for Brother Tim. Pray for Kara as she goes to the doctor's appointment. Then pray for Brother Fox with the stroke. And pray for each other. Looks like we got everything. All right, you are dismissed.